including messages about using Dale's medical history as leverage. "You didn't count on one thing, Marcus," Dale said quietly. "You didn't count on love being stronger than hate." Bethany took over again, her voice steady, despite the tears in her eyes. "I came to Premier looking for a villain. Instead, I found a man who spends his free evenings reading to sick children, who builds hospitals in countries that can't afford them, who carries the weight of 10,000 employees' livelihoods on his shoulders, but still notices when a nurse is having a bad day." She turned to face Dale fully now, speaking to him rather than the cameras. "I found a man who taught me that true power isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about lifting up those who need help. A man who made me believe in miracles long before we knew we were carrying 4 of them." The room went completely silent at that revelation. Even Wellington seemed stunned. "Yes," Dale confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "We're expecting quadruplets, 2 sets of identical twins. Medically impossible, according to every specialist we've seen. But then again, the best kinds of love stories don't play by the rules." He faced the reporters, his hand finding Bethany's. "Premier Technologies has never conducted unauthorized fertility treatments. Our miracle is exactly that, a miracle. One that proves that sometimes the heart knows things science can't explain." "The Healthcare Accountability Project," Bethany added, "has already forwarded all evidence of Meridian Medical's illegal activities to the SEC and FDA. Mr. Wellington, I believe there are some federal agents waiting to speak with you outside." As if on cue, 2 men in dark suits appeared at the press room doors. Wellington's face went from red to pale as he realized the game was truly over. "You'll regret this," he snarled as the agents approached. "Both of you." "No, Marcus," Dale said calmly. "The only regret here is that you never understood what real power looks like. It's not in destroying others. It's in being brave enough to love despite the risk of pain. It's in choosing truth over pride. It's in believing in impossible things and fighting for them with everything you have." The agents led Wellington away, but neither Dale nor Bethany watched him go. They were too busy looking at each other, seeing in each other's eyes the future they'd fought so hard to protect. The press conference dissolved into chaos as reporters shouted questions. But Dale and Bethany remained in their own world for a moment longer. "I love you," he whispered just for her ears, "every impossible bit of you." "Even though I investigated you," she whispered back, "especially because you investigated me. You saw all my flaws, all my battles, all my scars, and you chose to fight beside me anyway." The questions from reporters finally penetrated their bubble. "Ms. Sweet, will you continue nursing? Mr. Bucci, how will this affect Premier's stock? Are you concerned about the high-risk nature of a quadruplet pregnancy?" Dale raised their joined hands, silencing the room. "We'll take questions about Premier's future and the legal proceedings against Meridian Medical. But our personal miracle, that's ours to cherish privately. Some things are too precious for public consumption." Hours later, after the last reporter had left and the evidence had been formally filed with every relevant authority, Dale and Bethany stood in his office watching the sunset paint Seattle in shades of gold. "Was it worth it?" he asked softly. "Giving up your investigation career?" Bethany smiled, guiding his hand to her stomach. "I traded one type of investigation for another. Now we get to investigate how 4 tiny humans can make so much noise on an ultrasound, how 4 heartbeats can sound like a symphony, how love can create life where science says it can't exist." "Speaking of investigations," Dale said, dropping to one knee, "I'd like to investigate whether you'd consider making this miracle complete." He pulled out a ring, not a massive diamond as everyone would expect, but a delicate band with 4 tiny sapphires. "One for each of our impossible dreams." Bethany's laugh was pure joy as she pulled him up. "You're supposed to wait for the answer before you put the ring on my finger." I learned from the best investigator I know, he murmured against her lips. Sometimes you have to trust the evidence in front of you. The ring slipped perfectly onto her finger as the last rays of sun painted their world in gold. Below them, Seattle continued its eternal dance of light and shadow, but up here, in this moment, there was only light. Because sometimes the greatest testimony isn't spoken in courtrooms or press conferences. Sometimes it's written in heartbeats and hope, in courage and truth, in love that defies every logical explanation. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's written in the perfect way two broken people heal each other, creating miracles that science can't explain and love can't help but celebrate. The sun set on their day of truth, but their real story was just beginning. 4 tiny heartbeats strong and counting. Chapter 7. Unexpected Grace. The foster care record sat unopened on Dale's home office desk, a manila envelope containing the last traces of Bethany's twin sister's life. 3 weeks had passed since Wellington's arrest, and his final act of revenge had been to leave this envelope with Bethany's supervisor at the hospital. Your sister wasn't the only one who died alone, the note had read. Did you know she had a daughter? Another child lost in the system you abandoned. Bethany stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dale's penthouse, one hand resting on her growing belly, the other clutching a faded photograph of 2 identical little girls at a birthday party. She and her twin sister Sarah before the car accident that shattered their family, before Sarah ran away from their 3rd foster home, before Bethany channeled her pain into becoming a nurse, while her sister disappeared into Seattle's shadows. We don't have to open it today, Dale said softly, coming to stand behind her. His reflection in the glass showed the worry lines around his eyes, concern for her, for their babies, for the weight of this new revelation. Yes, we do. Bethany's voice was steady despite her trembling hands. If I have a niece out there, alone in the system, I can't let another child go through what Sarah and I did. She turned from the window and walked to the desk, picking up the envelope. Inside were police reports, hospital records, and finally, a birth certificate. Sarah had named her daughter Chidi, a name from their Nigerian father's culture, meaning God's protection. She's 13, Bethany whispered, tracing the date with her finger. Sarah died when Chidi was only 6. Drug overdose in a shelter downtown. The pain in her voice was raw, decades of guilt and grief breaking free. I should have looked harder for her, should have known she was still in Seattle. Dale wrapped his arms around her from behind, careful of her growing belly. At 14 weeks, the quadruplets were making their presence known, turning simple movements into careful navigation. We can't change the past, he murmured into her hair. But we can change Chidi's future. If you want to find her, I'll move heaven and earth to make it happen. Bethany leaned back against him, drawing strength from his presence. She's at Evergreen Group Home in Bellevue. According to these records, she's been through 4 foster homes in 7 years. The last note says she's resistant to placement and exhibits trust issues. Wonder why, Dale said dryly, his own childhood memories of loss coloring his voice. When can we go see her? Bethany turned in his arms, searching his face. We. Dale, this isn't your responsibility. With the babies coming and Premier still recovering from the Wellington scandal. Stop! He pressed a finger to her lips. First, nothing about you is a responsibility. You're a gift I thank God for every day. Second, those babies are miracles, but they're not the only kind of miracle worth fighting for. And third, he took a deep breath. I know what it's like to be the kid that no one wants to deal with, the one with too many issues, too much baggage. If Chidi is family to you, she's family to me. Tears spilled down Bethany's cheeks as she kissed him fiercely. When they broke apart, she was already reaching for her phone. "I'm calling the social worker. Today. Now." 2 days later, they sat in a stark meeting room at Evergreen Group Home. The walls were painted an institutional beige, decorated with faded motivational posters. The social worker, Ms. Chen, reviewed their paperwork with raised eyebrows. "You understand this won't be easy," she said, looking between them. "Chidi has significant trust issues. She's intelligent, brilliant actually, especially in science, but she doesn't let people close. And with your high-risk pregnancy—" "I'm her aunt," Bethany interrupted firmly. "Her mother was my twin sister. I'm all the blood family she has left. And I'm a guy who knows something about losing parents too young," Dale added quietly. "We're not looking for easy. We're looking for family." Miss Chen studied them for a long moment, then nodded. "Wait here." The 10 minutes they waited felt like years. Bethany paced despite her doctor's orders to take it easy, while Dale sat perfectly still, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. When the door opened, they both froze. Chidi was tall for 13, with Bethany's high cheekbones and Sarah's defiant chin. She wore ripped jeans and a hoodie covered in hand-drawn chemical formulas. Her eyes, so like Sarah's it made Bethany's heart ache, swept the room with practiced wariness. "Chidi," Ms. Chen said gently. "This is your Aunt Bethany and her fiancé, Dale." The girl's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened on her backpack straps. "I don't have an aunt." "Yes, you do." Bethany's voice cracked as she pulled out the old birthday photo. "This is your mom and me. We were twins. I lost track of her after we were separated in foster care. I didn't know about you until 2 days ago, or I would have come sooner. So much sooner." Chidi took the photo with trembling fingers. "Mum had this same picture," she whispered. "It burned in our last apartment." "I have more," Bethany said quickly. "Albums full, and stories. So many stories about your mom when we were kids, about your grandparents, about where your name comes from." "Why now?" Chidi's voice was sharp with years of protective anger. "Mom died 7 years ago. Where were you then?" "Fighting the wrong battles," Bethany admitted. "Trying to fix a broken healthcare system instead of fixing my broken family. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry. But I'm here now, if you'll let me be." "We both are," Dale added softly. He hadn't moved from his chair, instinctively understanding that this skittish teenager needed space. "No pressure, no expectations. Just family if you want it." Chidi's eyes fixed on Bethany's slightly rounded belly. "You're pregnant." "Yes, quadruplets, if you can believe it. 2 sets of identical twins." Something flickered in Chidi's eyes. Interest, maybe even a hint of scientific curiosity. "That's statistically improbable. The odds of naturally occurring quadruplets with 2 sets of identical twins are approximately 1 in 70 million. Dale grinned. "She's right. Our doctors are writing papers about it." "You like science?" Bethany asked hopefully. Chidi shrugged, but her fingers traced one of the formulas on her hoodie. "Chemistry makes sense. Molecules don't lie or leave." The words hit like physical blows, but Bethany pushed through the pain. "No, they don't. But sometimes people who've left come back. Sometimes they bring physics-defying miracles and impossible hopes and promises they intend to keep." "Pretty words," Chidi muttered, but she hadn't let go of the photo. "Not words," Dale said quietly. "Actions. We've already started the paperwork to become certified foster parents. We bought the penthouse next door to expand our home. There's a room there if you want it. Paint it any color you like. Fill it with chemistry sets and books and whatever makes you feel safe. And if I don't want it, then we keep visiting if you'll let us," Bethany said firmly. "We keep showing up. We keep proving that not everyone leaves." Chidi stared out the window for a long moment. The babies will come first, she said finally. Everyone always has something that comes first. No, Dale and Bethany said simultaneously. Dale leaned forward, his voice gentle but intense. Family isn't a competition, Chidi. Love doesn't divide, it multiplies, like a chemical reaction creating something greater than its original components. A tiny smile flickered at the corner of Chidi's mouth. That's not how chemical reactions work. Teach me, Dale offered. I know business and medical technology, but chemistry was never my strong suit. The smile grew slightly. You'd let me teach you? I'd be honored, and maybe you could help us set up the nursery. 4 babies are going to need some serious organizational systems. 4 babies are going to need someone who knows how to calculate proper formula ratios and sterilization procedures, Chidi muttered, then looked startled, as if she hadn't meant to show that much interest. Bethany's heart soared, but she kept her voice casual. That's true, especially since their mom is probably going to be on bed rest soon, and their dad can barely make coffee without breaking something. Hey! Dale protested, but his eyes were twinkling. For the first time, Chidi truly looked at them, not as threats or temporary fixtures, but as people. Can I think about it? Of course, Bethany said. We'll come back tomorrow? Maybe bring lunch and those photo albums? Chidi nodded slowly. I have chemistry club until 3. We'll come at 4, Dale promised. Give you time to decompress after school. As they stood to leave, Chidi suddenly stepped forward and thrust the birthday photo at Bethany. Keep it safe, she asked, her voice small, just in case. Bethany understood what she couldn't say. Keep it safe until I trust you enough to look at it again. Keep it safe until I believe you'll come back. Keep it safe until I'm ready to have a family again. I will, she promised. Everything precious deserves to be kept safe. Outside in their car, Bethany finally let the tears fall. Dale held her while she cried for Sarah, for Chidi, for all the years lost to fear and pain. She's so much like both of us, she whispered. Sarah's spirit, but my caution. Sarah's brilliance, but my walls. Sarah's spirit, but my caution. Sarah's brilliance, but my walls. She's perfect, Dale said simply, and she's ours, if she'll let herself be. 4 babies and a teenage genius? Bethany managed a watery laugh. Are we crazy? Probably. Dale kissed her temple. But the best kinds of love usually are. Now what do you say we go buy every chemistry set in Seattle? And books, Bethany added. Did you see how worn her backpack was? She needs new everything. Consider it done. Dale started the car, his expression determined. Operation Win Over Our Daughter begins now. Bethany's heart skipped at his words. Our daughter. Yes, that felt right. Whether it took days or months or years, they would prove to Chidi that some families were worth trusting, some love was worth the risk. Because sometimes grace came packaged in unexpected ways, in quadruplets defying medical science, in teenage girls drawing chemical formulas on hoodies, in second chances disguised as manila envelopes. And sometimes, just sometimes, it came in the simple promise to keep showing up day after day, until trust could bloom in soil that had known too much drought. They had 4 miracles growing under Bethany's heart, but perhaps the biggest miracle of all was waiting in a group home in Bellevue, learning to believe that not all equations ended in loss, that some formulas, when mixed with love and patience and unwavering commitment, could create something as powerful as hope. Chapter 8. Family Forged in Fire. The hospital monitor's steady beeping was the only sound in room 742 of Seattle's Advanced Maternal Care Unit. Bethany lay still against white sheets, her growing belly monitored by a complex array of equipment. 22 weeks into her quadruplet pregnancy, complications had begun mounting faster than anyone had anticipated. Chidi sat in the corner armchair, her chemistry textbook open but untouched. Over the past month, she'd gradually moved from supervised visits to weekends at the penthouse, and finally, 3 days ago, to signing the foster placement papers. Now, watching machines track her aunt's vitals, she gripped a pencil so hard it nearly snapped. "Your molecular structure diagram is crooked," Bethany murmured, opening her eyes. Chidi looked down at her notebook, where she'd been unconsciously sketching chemical bonds. "I haven't started the homework yet. I've been memorizing your medication schedule instead." "Of course you have." Bethany's smile was tired but proud. "What's the current count?" 8 daily medications, 3 administered intravenously. The magnesium sulfate is running at 2 grams per hour to prevent preterm labor. Your blood pressure is hovering at 142/90, which is still higher than optimal, but better than yesterday. Chidi rattled off the statistics with practiced ease. "Dr. Mitchell wants to start corticosteroids for the baby's lung development, but she's worried about how it might affect your blood pressure. Look at you, speaking medical terminology like a pro." Dale's voice came from the doorway. He carried 3 cups of coffee and a paper bag that smelled like Chidi's favorite cinnamon rolls from the bakery down the street. "The nurses have been teaching me," Chidi said, accepting a hot chocolate. She wasn't allowed coffee yet, despite her protests about the chemical benefits of caffeine. "Melissa showed me how to read the fetal monitors. Each baby has their own distinct heart rate pattern. Did you know that?" Dale settled into the chair beside Bethany's bed, taking her hand. "I did not. Tell me more." A month ago, Chidi would have withdrawn at the invitation to share knowledge, too used to being dismissed as a know-it-all. Now, she set aside her textbook and moved closer to the monitors. "See these 2 lines? Those are the identical twin girls. Their patterns are similar but not exactly the same. The boys' patterns are here and here. They're slightly faster on average. Melissa says it's normal for identical twins to have synchronized patterns. It's like they're already communicating." "Just like their big sister," Bethany said softly, "always keeping track of them." The word sister still made Chidi pause, but she didn't flinch away from it anymore. Instead, she reached out hesitantly and touched Bethany's belly where one of the babies was kicking. "That's Maya," she said confidently. "She's the most active between 10 a.m. and noon. I've been charting their movement patterns." Dale pulled a worn notebook from his briefcase, Chidi's pregnancy observations, filled with detailed notes and graphs, tracking everything from fetal movement to Bethany's vital signs. He'd had it bound in leather after finding Chidi asleep one night surrounded by loose papers covered in meticulous documentation. "Have you updated the charts from last night?" he asked, knowing how much she valued the responsibility. Chidi shook her head. "I was waiting for the morning blood pressure reading, but I did start a new section on amniotic fluid levels. Dr. Mitchell said they're crucial indicators at this stage." The casual way she used medical terminology made Bethany's heart ache with pride and sadness. No 13-year-old should be so well-versed in pregnancy complications, but Chidi had thrown herself into understanding every aspect of the high-risk pregnancy, as if knowledge could somehow protect them all from loss. A sharp pain made Bethany gasp, her hand tightening on Dale's. Instantly, Chidi was checking monitors while Dale hit the call button. "Contractions?" Chidi asked professionally, though her hands trembled slightly. "Just pressure," Bethany managed. "The babies are getting crowded in there." Dr. Mitchell arrived before the conversation could continue. She reviewed the monitors with a frown that made Chidi step closer to Bethany's bed protectively. "The contractions are getting more frequent," the doctor said finally. "We need to increase the magnesium sulfate. Bethany, I'm putting you on complete bed rest. No sitting up except for absolutely necessary medical procedures." "But that means she can't come to my science fair next week," Chidi blurted, then immediately looked embarrassed at revealing she'd been counting on their presence. Dale wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "I'll be there. Front row, embarrassing proud dad signs and all. The babies are the priority, Chidi said quickly, but her disappointment was visible. No, Bethany said firmly, despite her discomfort. Dale's right. He'll be there with the signs, and I want every detail recorded in that notebook of yours, so you can tell me everything afterward. Speaking of details, Dr. Mitchell interjected gently. Chidi, would you mind sharing your observations about the fetal movement patterns? The nurses mentioned you've been tracking them systematically. For the next 20 minutes, Chidi walked the doctor through her charts and graphs. Her scientific precision drew admiring comments from Dr. Mitchell, while her intimate knowledge of each baby's patterns revealed the depth of her emotional investment. This is remarkable work, Doctor, Mitchell said finally. Would you consider letting me share your documentation method with other families expecting multiples? Your system could help a lot of parents track their baby's development. Chidi's eyes widened. Really? But I'm just a kid. You're a scientist, Dale corrected. Age is irrelevant to good research. The pride in his voice made Chidi stand straighter. I could make it better, she said thoughtfully. Maybe create an app with standardized input fields and automated pattern recognition. After the science fair, Bethany reminded her with a smile, one world-changing project at a time. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. Chidi was instantly back in caretaker mode, adjusting pillows and checking monitors, while Dale spoke quietly with Dr. Mitchell. Mom. The word slipped out so softly that at first Bethany thought she'd imagined it. But Chidi was looking at her with worried eyes, one hand still resting on her belly where the babies kicked. Should I get the nurse? Bethany blinked back tears at the precious gift of that single word. No, sweetheart. Just stay close. Chidi nodded, perching on the edge of the bed. Always. Someone has to keep track of these troublemakers' vital signs. Dale returned to find his daughter teaching his fiancé the chemical structure of the medications keeping their babies safe, while said babies performed what felt like synchronized swimming. The scene was nothing like the family he'd imagined as a lonely CEO, and everything like the miracle he'd never dared to hope for. Dad? Chidi's voice broke into his thoughts. Can you quiz me on the medication timing while I update the charts? Only if you help me practice my embarrassing science fair cheers afterward, he countered, pulling up a chair. Chidi rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. Fine, but no chemistry puns on the signs. Too late, Bethany laughed. He already ordered custom t-shirts that say, My daughter's science fair project has great chemistry. The look of mortified joy on Chidi's face was worth every contraction, every worry, every moment of fear. Because family wasn't just about blood or genetics or perfect circumstances. Sometimes it was about choosing each other every day, about turning medical crises into opportunities for connection, about letting love rewrite the equations of belonging until fear gave way to trust. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between monitor beeps and medication schedules, it was about watching a brilliant young girl learn that she didn't have to earn her place in their hearts. She already had it, permanently. No chemical bonds required. Chapter 9, Legacy of Love. The Premier Technologies boardroom buzzed with tension as Chidi stood at the podium, her presentation queued up on the massive screen behind her. At 13, she barely reached the microphone, but her spine was straight as she faced the row of executives and board members. 2 weeks of preparation had led to this moment. Dale sat at the head of the table, deliberately keeping his expression neutral despite his bursting pride. Beside him, Jennifer from PR kept shooting worried glances at the reporters gathered in the observation area. The story of Premier's miracle quadruplets had exploded beyond containment, with media outlets offering millions for exclusive rights. But today wasn't about the babies. Today was about their big sister and her vision. Distinguished board members, Chidi began, her voice steady despite her nerves. The Premier Technologies Fertility Research Center is an ambitious project, one that will help countless families achieve their dreams of parenthood. However, I believe we're missing a crucial opportunity to expand its impact. She clicked to her first slide, architectural renderings of a new wing. I propose the addition of the Premier Foster Youth Support Center directly connected to the main facility. This wing would provide medical care, educational resources, and emotional support specifically tailored to children in the foster system. Murmurs rippled through the board members. This wasn't the presentation they'd expected from the CEO's foster daughter. They'd anticipated something safe, something symbolic, not a fully developed proposal that would require significant additional investment. The statistics are clear, Chidi continued, advancing to a series of graphs. Foster children face disproportionate medical challenges with limited access to consistent health care. By integrating foster youth services with our fertility center, we create a holistic approach to family building. Parents seeking fertility treatments will have direct exposure to adoption and fostering options, while foster children receive the specialized care they desperately need. She touched her tablet, and new images filled the screen, detailed floor plans, staffing requirements, budget projections. Weeks of late nights working with Dale had refined her initial concept into a viable business proposal. The cost analysis indicates an initial investment of $12 million for construction and first-year operations. Chidi's voice gained confidence as she moved into the financial details. However, through strategic partnerships with state agencies and private foundations, we can offset 60% of ongoing operational costs. More importantly, the social impact metrics suggest. This is absurd, Gregory Matthews, one of the older board members, interrupted. We're a medical technology company, not a social services agency, and with all due respect, you're a child. Dale started to speak, but Chidi was faster. Yes, Mr. Matthews, I am a child. One who spent 7 years in the system you think isn't your concern. Her voice remained professional, but her eyes blazed. Would you like to know what that taught me about business? The boardroom fell silent. It taught me that innovation without compassion is meaningless, that medical breakthroughs mean nothing if they're not accessible to those who need them most. And most importantly, it taught me that sometimes the best business decisions come from understanding human needs, not just market demands. She advanced to her next slide, a comparison of companies with strong social impact programs versus those without. Companies with integrated social responsibility initiatives showed 23% higher customer loyalty and 18% better talent retention. By combining our fertility expertise with foster youth support, we don't just help children. We create a unique market position that differentiates Premier from every other fertility center in the world. Dale watched the board members' expressions shift from skepticism to interest. His daughter, and his heart soared every time he thought that word, wasn't just pulling at heartstrings. She was speaking their language, showing them how doing good could also mean doing well. The foster care system is broken, Chidi continued. I know because I lived it. But Premier has a unique opportunity to create something revolutionary. Imagine prospective parents coming here not just for fertility treatments, but for comprehensive family-building support. Imagine foster children receiving world-class medical care while being exposed to positive adult role models in a professional environment. She clicked to her final slide, a rendering of the completed center at sunset, its windows glowing with warm light. This isn't just about adding a wing to a building. It's about expanding our definition of what family can mean. It's about creating a legacy that goes beyond medical breakthroughs to touch lives that might otherwise be forgotten. The room was absolutely silent when she finished. Even the reporters, had stopped taking notes, caught up in the power of her presentation. Finally, Catherine Chen, the board's senior member, spoke. The financial projections seem solid, but the staffing requirements are intensive. How do you propose we handle specialized pediatric care alongside our fertility services? Chidi smiled. I'm glad you asked. She pulled up a new slide. I've already discussed this with Dr. Mitchell. By integrating pediatric rotations from Seattle Children's Hospital, we create a training opportunity for medical residents while ensuring comprehensive care. Additionally, ... For the next hour, she fielded questions with a composure that made Dale's chest tight with emotion. Every challenge was met with carefully researched answers. Every concern was addressed with practical solutions. When the last question had been answered, Catherine Chen looked at Dale. I move to approve the initial funding for feasibility studies and detailed architectural planning. Seconded, came another voice. Then another. The vote was unanimous. As the boardroom emptied, reporters clamoring for comments, Chidi finally allowed herself to relax. Dale pulled her into a fierce hug. Your mother would be so proud, he whispered, meaning both Bethany and Sarah. Do you think... Chidi hesitated. Do you think we can really help them? The other kids like me? Dale looked at his daughter, this brilliant, wounded, healing girl who had turned her pain into purpose. I think you already have. This center, this vision, it's going to change lives. Speaking of changing lives, Jennifer interrupted apologetically, Good Morning America wants an exclusive on the Quadruplets story. They're offering... No, Chidi said firmly. Mom needs rest, not cameras. The baby's story is private. But, she straightened her shoulders, I'll do an interview about the foster care center, if that helps. Dale watched in amazement as his 13-year-old daughter calmly negotiated terms with his PR director. Gone was the withdrawn girl from the group home. In her place stood a young woman who had found her voice and her purpose. Later, in Bethany's hospital room, they celebrated with contraband chocolate cake while watching the local news coverage. My brilliant girl, Bethany beamed as Chidi showed her the approved plans. You're going to help so many children. Our brilliant girl, Dale corrected, earning a smile from Chidi that lit up the room. The babies chose that moment to make their presence known, kicking in what felt like synchronized approval. Chidi immediately began documenting their movements in her ever-present notebook. Maya started it, she noted professionally. She always leads the dance party. As Dale watched his daughter record their miracle baby's movements while discussing architectural plans with Bethany, he marveled at how love could transform everything it touched. Wellington's last attempt at revenge, revealing Chidi's existence, had backfired spectacularly. Instead of destroying their happiness, it had completed their family in ways none of them could have imagined. Because sometimes the greatest legacies aren't built with bricks and mortar, but with courage and compassion and the determination to turn pain into purpose. And sometimes, the most powerful force for change isn't money or influence or medical breakthroughs. It's the heart of a child who refuses to let others suffer as she did. It's the love of a family forged in fire and faith. It's the simple, world-changing truth that every life has value, every story matters, and every child deserves a chance to build their own legacy of love. Chapter 10. Final Battle. At 30 weeks, Bethany's body began to surrender. The monitors in her hospital room played a symphony of urgent alerts as her blood pressure spiked dangerously high. Dr. Mitchell had moved her to the ICU, where machines tracked every breath, every heartbeat, both hers and the baby's. Dale hadn't left the hospital in 3 days. He ran Premier Technologies from a makeshift office in the corner of Bethany's room, his empire managed between beeping monitors and whispered medical consultations. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his usual impeccable appearance replaced by wrinkled dress shirts and uncombed hair. Chidi had converted the ICU waiting room into a study hall, her textbooks spread across 3 chairs, while she alternated between homework and reviewing medical journals. She'd recruited a rotation of medical students to help her research similar cases, promising them recommendations from Dale in exchange for their expertise. "Her protein levels are rising again," Chidi announced quietly, studying the latest lab results. She'd learned to read medical charts faster than some residents, her scientific mind focused entirely on understanding her mother's condition. Dale looked up from his laptop, where he'd been on a video call with his board. "How bad?" "Bad enough that Dr. Mitchell ordered hourly monitoring." Chidi's voice was clinical, but her hands shook as she updated her charts. "The preeclampsia is getting worse." They both looked at Bethany, who lay still against white sheets, her skin almost as pale as the hospital linens. Medication kept her sedated to prevent seizures, but occasionally her fingers would twitch, searching for something or someone. "The babies are stable," Chidi continued, because focusing on data helped her stay strong. "Their heart rates are maintaining good variability. Maya's still the most active, but even she's quieter today. It's like they know to conserve their energy." Dale saved his work and closed his laptop, moving to sit beside his daughter. "What do your research students say?" Katie found 3 cases of successful quadruplet deliveries with severe preeclampsia, all between 30 and 32 weeks. James is reviewing a paper about new treatment protocols, and Michael, she hesitated. Michael is looking into survival rates. "Hey," Dale turned her chair to face him. "Your mum is the strongest person I know. And those babies? They're fighters, just like their big sister." Chidi's composure cracked slightly. "The statistics." "Sometimes love is stronger than statistics," Dale interrupted gently. "You taught me that." Before she could respond, one of the monitors began screaming. Bethany's blood pressure was climbing again, despite the medication dripping steadily into her IV. Medical staff flooded the room, their voices overlapping with urgent commands. Dale and Chidi were pushed toward the door, but not before they saw Bethany's body arch with a seizure. "No," Chidi whispered, her scientific detachment shattering. "Mom!" Dale held her back as doctors worked, his own heart threatening to stop at the sight of Bethany convulsing. Through the chaos, they heard Dr. Mitchell's voice. "We need to deliver. Now." "It's too early," Chidi protested. But her words were lost in the rush of activity as they prepared to move Bethany to surgery. Dr. Mitchell paused long enough to address them. "The babies have a better chance than their mother right now. We have to choose." Dale felt his world tilting sideways. "Save them," he managed. "Save all of them." "We'll try." Dr. Mitchell's eyes were kind but serious. "Chidi, I need your notes. All the research, all the cases you found, anything that might help." Chidi ran for her notebooks while Dale called their family lawyer. In minutes, papers were signed, giving him medical power of attorney. As they wheeled Bethany toward the operating room, he kissed her forehead. "Fight," he whispered. "Please, fight." The next hours were endless. Dale paced while Chidi read medical journals aloud, her voice growing hoarse as she searched for anything that might help. The waiting room filled with Premier Technologies employees, hospital staff who'd grown to love Bethany, and even some of Chidi's former foster care workers. "I should have seen it coming," Chidi said suddenly, her voice small. The signs were there in her last labs. "If I'd calculated the trends sooner." "Stop." Dale knelt in front of her chair. "You're 13. You've done more than most medical professionals. This isn't your fault." "I can't lose another mum," she whispered. "And the babies, they're too small. The survival rate at 30 weeks is high enough," Dale interrupted, "especially with the steroid shots we did last week. Remember what you told the board about how sometimes the best decisions come from understanding human needs? Chidi nodded slightly. Well, right now, those babies need their big sister to believe in them. And your mom needs you to keep being the brilliant scientist who's going to help other families avoid this in the future. Determination flickered in Chidi's eyes. She pulled out her tablet and began typing rapidly. What are you doing? Designing a monitoring system, she said, her fingers flying over the screen. Something that can track trends in lab values and vital signs, predict complications before they become critical. If I combine machine learning algorithms with the research parameters we've been studying... Dale watched in amazement as his daughter channeled her fear into innovation. She worked furiously, pausing only to update her siblings' charts when nurses brought news from the operating room. Hours passed. Coffee cups accumulated. Chidi's project grew from a simple monitoring system to a comprehensive maternal health platform. Dale alternated between helping her refine the interface and praying harder than he'd ever prayed in his life. Finally, Dr. Mitchell appeared, looking exhausted but smiling. They're all stable, she announced. The babies are in the NICU, small but fighting, and Bethany. She paused, her smile growing. Bethany is asking for her family. The relief was so intense that Dale's legs nearly gave out. Chidi launched herself into his arms, her tablet clattering forgotten to the floor. She's really okay, Chidi asked, her voice breaking. All of them. Come see for yourself, Dr. Mitchell said. The nurses are already taking bets on which baby is going to be the first to break out of their incubator. Apparently, Maya's heart rate increases every time someone mentions her sister's name. They followed her through the quiet hospital corridors, first to the NICU, where 4 tiny miracles fought their first battle with their mother's determination. Then to recovery, where Bethany lay pale but alive, her smile tired but radiant. My scientists, she whispered as they entered. Did you solve all the world's medical problems while I was away? Just some of them, Chidi said, carefully hugging her. I invented a new monitoring system, and I may have accidentally designed an app for tracking multiple birth pregnancies, and possibly reorganized the NICU protocols based on statistical analysis of outcome data. Of course you did! Bethany's laugh was weak but real. And you? She asked Dale. I just loved you, he said simply. All of you. That's enough, Bethany murmured as her eyes drifted closed. That's everything. They sat with her through the night, Chidi curled in the recliner while Dale held Bethany's hand. Every hour nurses brought updates from the NICU. Every hour their miracles grew stronger, and in the quiet moments between updates, Dale watched his daughter sleep and marveled at how love could transform fear into purpose, pain into innovation, and a broken family into something stronger than steel. Because sometimes the final battle isn't won with medicine or money or even science. Sometimes it's won with the quiet determination of a teenager who refuses to accept statistical probabilities. Sometimes it's won with the unwavering faith of a father who believes in impossible things. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's won with the combined strength of 6 hearts beating in perfect symphony, each one fighting not just for survival, but for the chance to be a family forged in fire, tested by fear, and made stronger by every battle they faced together. Chapter 11. Dawn's Promise. The first light of dawn painted Seattle's skyline in shades of pearl and gold as Bethany's eyes fluttered open. The world came back to her in pieces, the steady beeping of monitors, the antiseptic smell of hospital air, and the warm weight of her family asleep across her bed. Dale sat slumped in the bedside chair, his hand still holding hers even in sleep. His normally pristine appearance was delightfully disheveled, tie loosened, shirt wrinkled, stubble darkening his jaw. On her other side, Chidi had fallen asleep with her head resting on the edge of the mattress, one hand clutching her ever-present medical notebook. But it was what Chidi had written on the window that made Bethany's heart swell. In her precise handwriting, using the erasable markers from the nurse's station, she'd covered the glass with their family motto, "Love isn't about probability, it's about possibility." Below it she'd added, "Come on, Mum." 4 more miracles awaiting. Bethany's movement, slight as it was, made Dale stir. His eyes opened, immediately finding hers, and the love she saw there brought tears to her eyes. "Hey, beautiful," he whispered, his voice rough with sleep and emotion. "Hey yourself," she managed, her throat dry. "You look terrible." His laugh, though quiet, made Chidi lift her head. For a moment, she just stared at Bethany, her scientific composure cracking to reveal the scared 13-year-old beneath. "Mom," the word was barely audible. "Come here, my brilliant girl," Bethany said, opening her arms despite the IV lines. Chidi moved carefully, mindful of the medical equipment as she curled against Bethany's side. "Your blood pressure is finally stable," she reported, because facts were her safety net. "The new medication protocol is working, and the babies are perfect," Dale finished. "Small but mighty, just like their big sister." Bethany touched Chidi's cheek, wiping away tears the teenager was trying to hide. "Tell me everything I missed, and don't skip the scientific details. I know you've probably revolutionized maternal health care while I was sleeping." Pride briefly overcame emotion in Chidi's eyes. "I designed a new monitoring system. The hospital's tech department is already reviewing it. And I organized all the research on quadruplet pregnancies with severe preeclampsia. There were only 14 documented cases worldwide, but I found patterns in the treatment protocols that could help future cases." "Of course you did," Bethany smiled, then noticed the dark circles under her daughter's eyes. "Have you slept at all?" "She power-napped between research sessions," Dale said, "and somehow managed to keep Premier running while I was falling apart. The board actually called her for advice yesterday. They just needed clarification on the foster care wing specifications," Chidi mumbled, but her cheeks flushed with pleasure. A nurse appeared with Bethany's morning medications, smiling at the family tableau. "Dr. Mitchell will be here soon for rounds, and the NICU sent new photos of the quads. Would you like to see?" "Please," Bethany breathed, and moments later she was looking at 4 tiny fighters in their incubators. Each baby had a handmade name card, decorated with chemical formulas. Chidi's work, obviously. "Maya's the strongest," Chidi reported, pointing to one of the photos. "She keeps setting off the monitors because she's too active. Mia's quieter, but her oxygen levels are perfect. The boys are exactly the same size. I've been tracking their measurements down to the millimeter." "Our little scientists in training," Dale chuckled. "Well, Mason definitely takes after Dad. He gets cranky during shift changes, just like you in board meetings." Chidi's teasing made Dale clutch his chest in mock offense. "And Marcus has Mum's steady heart rate, even during procedures." Bethany studied the photos, memorizing every tiny detail of her baby's faces. "They're so small," she whispered. "But fierce," Chidi assured her. "The NICU nurses say they've never seen preemie quads so determined." "Maya actually grabbed the doctor's finger yesterday. Her grip strength is already above average for her gestational age." "I need to see them." Bethany started to sit up, but both Dale and Chidi gently pressed her back. "Soon," Dale promised, "but you need to get stronger first. Doctor's orders." "And my orders," Chidi added firmly. "I've calculated the optimal recovery timeline based on your lab values and vital signs. If you follow the protocol exactly, you can visit the NICU in approximately 72 hours. Bethany couldn't help laughing at her daughter's serious expression. "Have you created a spreadsheet for my recovery too?" 3 spreadsheets, 2 monitoring charts, and a probability matrix for different rehabilitation scenarios, Chidi admitted. The nurses helped. Speaking of help, Dale interjected, your fan club has taken over the waiting room. The entire pediatric nursing staff, half of Premier's executives, and I'm pretty sure the hospital board chairman has been sleeping in his office to stay close. And my research students brought more journals, Chidi added. We're expanding the literature review to include international cases. Did you know there's a fascinating study from Singapore about maternal fetal monitoring in multiple births? Bethany listened as her daughter excitedly explained the research, while Dale ordered breakfast and fielded messages from well-wishers. The sunrise painted her family in gentle light, transforming the sterile hospital room into something sacred. A soft knock interrupted Chidi's scientific discourse. Dr. Mitchell entered, beaming at seeing her patient awake and alert. Someone's been asking for their mother, she said, wheeling in a tablet displaying a live feed from the NICU. Ready to say good morning to your miracles? The image showed all 4 babies, their tiny forms moving slightly in their incubators. As they watched, Maya kicked her foot, setting off a chain reaction as her siblings stirred in response. They do that all the time, Chidi explained excitedly. I've been documenting their synchronized movements. The statistical probability of such coordinated behavior at this developmental stage is incredibly low, but they consistently demonstrate. She stopped as Bethany pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Never change, my beautiful scientist. The baby's vital signs actually improve when Chidi reads to them, Dr. Mitchell shared. She's been doing medical journal club in the NICU. I think we have 4 future doctors on our hands. 5, Dale corrected, squeezing Chidi's shoulder. Our oldest is already revolutionizing maternal health care. Chidi ducked her head, but not before they saw her pleased smile. She turned back to the NICU feed, automatically checking the monitors visible in the background. Everything looks perfect, she assured Bethany. Their parameters are all within optimal ranges. Maya's being a show-off as usual. See how her heart rate elevates when she knows we're watching. And look, Mia's responding to her sister's activity. The boys are sleeping through it all, just like Dad in morning meetings. I do not sleep in meetings, Dale protested. Your quarterly projections presentation. Chidi raised an eyebrow. I have photographic evidence. Their gentle bickering washed over Bethany like a healing balm. This was her family, brilliant, caring, slightly crazy, and absolutely perfect. They had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger. They had turned medical crisis into hope for future families. They had forged bonds that transcended blood and genetics and probability. The morning light strengthened, turning Chidi's window message into a glowing promise. Love isn't about probability, it's about possibility. And they were living proof that sometimes the most beautiful possibilities came disguised as statistical impossibilities. 4 tiny miracles in the NICU, 1 brilliant teenager who turned fear into scientific innovation, and 2 parents who had found each other against all odds. They were writing their own story, one that defied medical textbooks and exceeded every expectation. Dawn had never looked more promising. Chapter 12. Miracles Times 4. The delivery room at Seattle's finest hospital became holy ground on a rain-washed Tuesday morning. Prayer and science merged as machines tracked 4 tiny heartbeats and 1 mother's courage. Bethany lay still against white sheets, her face serene despite the controlled chaos around her. Dale stood at her head, one hand gripping hers, while the other smoothed back her hair. "They're ready, Doctor," Mitchell announced from behind her surgical mask. "Bethany, on the next contraction." Chidi watched from her carefully negotiated position near the monitors, wearing personalized scrubs with Big Sister embroidered over the heart. a gift from the hospital staff who had come to love the teenage scientist who could read medical charts faster than some residents. Her tablet was ready to document every moment, but for once, the scientist in her took a back seat to the daughter watching her family's miracle unfold. Maya announced her arrival with a cry that woke the entire floor, strong, demanding, unmistakably ready to take on the world. Just like in the ultrasounds, Chidi noted with tears in her eyes, always leading the way. Mia followed moments later, her tiny hand somehow finding her sisters in their first seconds of life. The gesture made even the most seasoned nurses pause in wonder. The sisters who had shared every moment of their journey weren't about to stop now. Mason and Marcus arrived together, their synchronized heartbeats never faltering through the whole process. Even as the doctors lifted them free, their vitals stayed perfectly matched on Chidi's beloved monitors. Dale sang through it all, terrible, beautiful, emotion-choked renditions of every love song he knew. The staff had indeed worn earplugs as rumored, but his voice carried more love than music anyway. Bethany's laugh sob at his off-key version of Sweet Child O' Mine was recorded for posterity in Chidi's meticulous notes. 10 fingers! Chidi called out as she helped the nurses count, her voice steady despite her tears. 10 toes, 100% perfect. When the last measurements were taken, the last tests completed, they wheeled 4 small incubators into position around Bethany's bed. Dale stood between his wife and their miracles, his hands shaking as he touched each tiny face. "Hello, my impossibilities," he whispered. Chidi moved between the incubators, adjusting monitors with practiced ease, while adding her own special touches. Tiny nameplates decorated with chemical formulas for love, courage, hope, and joy. Each baby had their elements carefully chosen based on their personalities in utero. Maya's formula has the most reactive elements, she explained to the nurses, while Mia's combines stability and grace. The boys share complementary electron patterns, just like their synchronized hearts. As dawn painted the hospital room in shades of gold, the new family of 7 came together in a moment that defied every medical probability. Maya, living up to her formula, had already tried to grab 3 different medical instruments. Mia watched the world with her mother's thoughtful eyes. Mason and Marcus dozed in perfect synchronization, their tiny chests rising and falling in harmony. And Chidi, the sister who had helped guide them into the world, stood guard over her siblings with a fierce love that had nothing to do with DNA and everything to do with destiny. "They're all fighters," Dr. Mitchell declared, checking vital signs one last time. 4 perfect miracles. 5 miracles, Dale corrected, pulling Chidi into a hug. "And one extraordinary mother who made impossible things possible." Bethany reached for her oldest daughter's hand. "Read to them," she asked softly. "They know your voice." Chidi pulled out the book she'd chosen months ago. Not a fairy tale or a lullaby, but A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. "Because even the smallest particles in the universe are part of something magnificent," she explained as she began to read. The babies settled at the sound of her voice, even Maya pausing her explorations to listen. Physics and philosophy filled the room as morning light wrapped them all in a gentle glow. Love, like quantum mechanics, followed its own rules. It expanded beyond the boundaries of logic, defied the laws of probability, and turned ordinary moments into miracles. Their family had been forged in fire, tested by fear, and strengthened by every challenge they faced. Now, as 4 new heartbeats joined their symphony of love, they knew that some equations couldn't be solved with science alone. Sometimes the answer wasn't in the statistics or the medical journals or even the chemical formulas that Chidi loved to balance. Sometimes it was in the way a teenage girl could heal from abandonment by becoming the fiercest protector of others. Sometimes it was in the way a man who thought he couldn't have children could become the father of 5 miracles. Sometimes it was in the way a nurse's compassion could transform not just lives, but entire healthcare systems. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was in the simple truth that love, like science, began with believing in impossible things. As morning light filled the room, Chidi paused in her reading to wipe away tears. The babies had drifted to sleep, but their monitors showed they were still listening, their vital signs synchronized to the cadence of their sister's voice. Dale held Bethany's hand while she rested, his eyes moving from one miracle to the next, memorizing every perfect detail of this moment. And somewhere, in the vast universe that Chidi was reading about, stars aligned and atoms danced and love proved, once again, that the most powerful force in existence wasn't gravity or electromagnetic energy or even the strong nuclear force that held atoms together. It was the simple, world-changing power of hearts that chose to beat as one. 5 miracles in a hospital room, proof that sometimes the most extraordinary stories began with ordinary people who dared to believe in impossible things. And as Seattle's rain turned to sunshine, their story became part of the greater cosmic dance, a reminder that in a universe of infinite possibilities, love was the most miraculous equation of all. Don't forget to subscribe.